Hi, my name's Owen. I'm the founder of Sourcetable. Sourcetable is an AI spreadsheet that helps people do better, faster work by pairing them with AI. And so it works just like a regular spreadsheet, like Google Sheets or Excel. You have all your formulas and functions and charts and graphs. But in addition, you have an AI-powered chatbot, so you can ask any questions you may like. That chatbot has full context and scope. So if you select some data and arrange, the AI always understands what you're referring to. And this is really helpful for simple things like formula assist and charting and data cleaning, all the way up to advanced analysis and data summaries and much more complex things. But yeah, we just try to make life a little easier by infusing AI into your regular workflows in the spreadsheet. Spreadsheets are the most used analytical product in the world. They're used by over 1 billion people. And we haven't seen a new one emerge in about 17 years since Google Sheets. So there's a big opportunity for innovation. The kinds of people who currently use Sourcetable and enjoy using it are the kinds of people who do a lot of spreadsheet work generally. They work in finance, they work in analysis, they might work in operations or sales roles and spend a lot of time in their spreadsheets. And we make it easier for them to be able to do their work at a higher quality level for analysis. We'll be able to do faster work for data enrichment or cleaning, all that kind of stuff. There is one user group that particularly likes using Sourcetable, which is newer people coming to the market. So recent grads, maybe first or second year students in finance or analysis roles, they get a lot of value out of Sourcetable because they don't know how to do everything yet in a spreadsheet, and they find it's much easier to learn with an AI companion. And so you can ask, like, what is the VLOOKUP for this formula? How do I write this kind of thing? And it's much less embarrassing than having to go and ask your colleague, because you can just constantly get this iterative learning workflow. And what's nice about Groq is that that's instant. And so you're just constantly saying in flow. What you see with more advanced users is that they're very articulate about how they want data analysis done. And so they're able to break down a question and get a lot of value and a lot of leverage out of pairing with AI. Whereas a more junior, shall we say, employee is able to accelerate up to the pace of, say, someone who's been around for about 5 years much, much faster. And so I think we're seeing this through coding, we're seeing this through spreadsheets, you're seeing this in other content production, that the young of today, the youth of today, are the ones learning the fastest and getting the most leverage. And generally what you see is they're able to really upskill and massively ramp up in that first year much, much faster and be much more productive. There is no shortage of mundane minutiae in the land of spreadsheets. Some really easy ones is just cleaning data. So you may have phone numbers that need to be put in a correct format. You might be preparing a mail merge that needs extracting last names. You might need to get a little bit of an idea for salutations for the email to mix it up. You can get it to generate copy, clean data, suggest formulas. I use it personally for a lot of data cleaning, to be honest, because that's where I find that I spend hours having to clean data before I can do the analysis. And that's not value-added work. That's not work that's driven by curiosity. That's just grinding. And all of that work can go away when you pair it with AI. So there's use cases like just data summarization is really easy. So you might get an employee survey with a couple of hundred employees, and instead of having to read through line by line, you can just ask, what are the top 3 takeaways? What are the top 3 recommendations? What are the things we can improve? And people find that really easy. And the experience of working with AI and spreadsheet is very different to working in a chat thread, because you have that whole context of the spreadsheet right in front of you, in a way that's very natural because you already know how to use it. You're just getting more value with AI. We find there's actually significantly more advanced use cases that we also do that extends what spreadsheets can currently do. So Sourcetable also will sync databases and integrations, like data integrations. And so we use AI to talk directly to a database. You can ask questions directly of a database or maybe your analytics tool. And in the background, what's going on is that Sourcetable's writing a lot of Python or SQL. And so the user is given a hallucination-free answer that is verifiable through code. And then that data is seamlessly injected into the spreadsheet and keep going about your workflow. And so we don't really talk about that too much because most people in spreadsheet land tend to be doing much simpler things. But if you're on the advanced end of the analysis spectrum, you can do very advanced kinds of computation and analysis. And we see outside of the business world, a lot of people in science doing climate science, soil science, criminology research, all sorts of unexpected use cases who are pushing that more advanced analytical spectrum as well. So Sourcetable looks and feels exactly like Google Sheets or Excel, all the same formulas and functions. It's actually architected quite differently. In addition to having the workbook, we also have a storage and compute layer, and that allows us to have direct, seamless access to data inside the spreadsheet. And that also allows the AI agents, if you're getting a program to kind of do operations for you on behalf of you, to do that with direct access to the data. And that's why it's able to do those kinds of analyses. And so instead of having to jump around to different applications, it's all centralized inside Sourcetable. Two easy use cases that we find ourselves using constantly is checking our own database to see who signed up this week. How often did they use the service? Who are the most active users? How many people did they invite? And so you're essentially building all the normal reports and workflows, except that it's much faster and much easier and much more curiosity driven by using AI because it becomes conversational. And then you get it into the spreadsheet, you can ask it to make you a chart or a graph or a pivot, and everything's just kind of conversational with the computer. Another one in the analytics context is, once again, we use Google Analytics to analyze our analytics. And I can ask, say, what was our site traffic of the last 30 days? And how did that compare against the previous 2 30-day increments? And it'll show me my month-on-month growth without me having to click around and write SQL or do any of that. You get the answer, and then you can drill down and pull the data in and do more advanced analysis. I will say, though, for most people, what they find is that the regular simple things like formulas, charting, graphing, data cleaning, summarization, that's the bread and butter of what we do. And more advanced things is us just pushing the frontiers of AI. We are a spreadsheet, which means that people expect the application to flow in real time. When you do a calculation in a spreadsheet and you hit enter, you expect that calculation to turn up immediately. When you ask a question of the AI, you expect an answer immediately. When you expect analysis, you expect that done immediately. And to be able to do that, especially over, let's say, potentially thousands of discrete operations, because you're dealing with a lot of spreadsheet data, you need an inference engine that works really, really quickly. And what we found through Groq is what we could get in 2 seconds would take us sometimes up to a minute in other services. And that's going to break the user experience and not make that seamless flow that people are used to when they're working inside a spreadsheet possible. So that's why we went with Groq, because Groq is the fastest. What we're seeing is that the people who are the most curious and the most iterative with AI are the ones who get the most value out of it. Because I think we are all learning together how to get the most value out of having essentially unlimited digital intelligence at our fingertips. And the same way that coders have to ask nicely or ask in a certain way with prompt engineering to get code back in a certain format, users learn that maybe if they're asking too complex a question and they break it down into steps, that they can get a much better answer. Likewise, if you don't know how to break it into steps, you can ask AI, hey, this is the problem I'm trying to solve. What are some recommended steps that you suggest? And then you just you step through it one by one. But yeah, we're definitely seeing the most curious users are the ones who are getting the most value out of AI. Like my neighbor has a marine science philanthropy, and we were looking at ocean sensor data. I had no background in oceanography. And so the first thing we did was pull a CSV in, and then I just asked, what is this data? And it said, oh, it's a bunch of ocean sensor data. So, okay, what can I do with this data? And it goes, oh, here's a bunch of analysis. So, well, how do I do that analysis? And it'll step you through exactly how to do the kinds of analysis you want. And that's the same kind of example that you might need, whether you're building a kind of operating model or a cash flow model, as you would for any other kind of spreadsheet work. And what's nice about AI models is that they're broad and general, which means that although we built this with a thought around kind of financial people and operators, they're actually broadly applicable to spreadsheet users writ large. To be honest, what we find we use the most inside of Groq is Llama 3.1 and Llama 3.0, and we use those in slightly different contexts. But those are the main ones we use. And the reason for that is that we're able to get a large enough context window while still getting the kind of sophistication of analysis and results in the time that we need, which is basically instant. And so when a user asks a question of the AI, the first thing we do is pass the question, and that's using a model in Groq. The second thing we do is run it through a prompt router. So we essentially have a bunch of routes, let's say 10, and that might be a charting route, a analysis route, a coding route, a summarization route. And we do a probabilistic analysis to say what kind of AI agent should be answering this question. And then from there, we farm it out to the appropriate AI model inside Groq, or using Groq. And we're using Groq at each of these stages. After that, we may use Groq as well. So with Llama, usually if it's a formula assist, that's a low amount of data in and out. And so it's a low amount of tokens in and out. And we're able to keep using Groq for that. If it is a very large data set, we may then use either commercial or open source models, depending upon the question. And so we find that Groq is great for the initial kind of understanding of the question, prompt routing, and then on a case-by-case basis for a lot of answers as well. And if it's not the right model, we're still using Groq to route to the appropriate model. Once the answer has happened, we also will then do a kind of mixture of experts approach often to check that the answer answered the question. And so end to end, we're kind of doing an audit at the beginning and the end to make sure that we're able to give a hallucination-free response to users that's highly accurate. What's nice is that I might have a spreadsheet that's 1,000 rows long with a bunch of columns that all need enriching or with data cleaning. And so you're dealing with thousands of cells, which might be thousands of discrete operations that need to happen very, very quickly. So it could literally be thousands, or it might be one or two, a handful. It depends on what the user's doing. They range from very simple to very complex. The best example of very simple is there's a lot of how-to questions. How do I do such and such in a spreadsheet? We just defer to a Llama model in Groq, and it will give you the answer straight away. For a more advanced question, you might be asking something from a database, and in the background, we have an agent that does a bunch of things, but one of the things it might be doing is essentially doing recursion through SQL and using feedback from success or failure to make sure that it gets the optimal response. And that might be anywhere between 1, 2, 5, 10, 20 responses before we actually get the right SQL generated. And what's nice is if we were doing this in any other service, you'd be sitting there for minutes. And even in that example where you might have a 10 or 15 or 20 deep response chain, the user only sees one response. But the machine is doing a lot of querying of data in the background, and you're constantly rewriting code to make that happen. It's still able to get back to the user in a number of seconds, which is just incredible that that's even possible at all. A good example is because if you were to go into ChatGPT, for example, and try to clean data on a multi-thousand row file, that's not possible to do in ChatGPT today. And I haven't checked Claude, but we are able to essentially shard that out to a bunch of different, to a bunch of different Groq queries, and then we rate limit it, and we let things come through asynchronously. And so different experiences are possible in different mediums, but yeah, we use it in a lot of different ways. It's been fantastic. Groq's API feels very familiar. It's 10 lines of code and you're getting started. You've got an active Discord channel. And if you have any questions, people in the community are generally very helpful. You've got a large list of open source models. I think I mentioned that we are using both of the Facebook Llama models already. We'll probably end up using some of the voice models that are available. And what we're seeing is that as the pace of acceleration in technology accelerates, Groq seems to be keeping pace and making these models available to us, which is really fantastic. And frankly, without your chips, our user experience would not be possible. So really, really proud to be powered by Groq. As I mentioned, spreadsheets are the largest analytical tool on the planet. I think the future of spreadsheets is spreadsheets. Essentially, capitalism is run on spreadsheets. Most business workflows run on spreadsheets. Most data in the realm of science is still being done in spreadsheets. And so ultimately, we see this form factor remaining regardless of what happens in the technology cycle, because you still need a human who can look at the work, who can audit the work, and a system that's interoperable with all other systems. So we expect that the format of the spreadsheet to remain, but the way that it interacts with third-party systems will radically change. And so I mentioned earlier that our architecture is quite different to Google Sheets or Excel. The experience for the user is the same in the workbook, but underneath it, we have storage and compute, which allows us to run these more sophisticated AI agents to be able to essentially just run applications on the data. And so we do those internally, and we have our own applications that are built. An example of an application might just be a data cleaning application or a charting application. The next step for us is having those applications interact with third-party services, and then one day third-party services interacting with us in addition to user data. And there's a lot of security and privacy that behooves us to move slowly and deliberately to make that happen. But where we think the world goes is you have a network of AI agents interacting with each other on behalf of users to do whatever it is that they wanted to do, usually related to work in the spreadsheet context. And what we see is that there will be a few core hubs for where these agents will coalesce. And we see spreadsheets as being one of the core ones where the future of agents will reside. And the reason for that is that Sheets and Excel both have the largest application plugin ecosystems in the business world, but they are not well set up for let's say agentic futures, and that's why we built Sourcetable. I mean, ultimately, there's a good phrase from I think Tim O'Reilly, which is create more value than you capture. So hopefully, we can be an ecosystem player in that sense.